What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Free Assange Vigil. This is week 99. Week 99. It's crazy. We have a lot of fun stuff coming up on the show today. A couple great activists to talk about, you know, all the goings on in the world. Well, not all of them, because that would be a long show. But before we get into guests, we do need to go over the numbers as of today, May 25th. So we have 3,815 days of illegal and arbitrary detention for Julian Assange. There have been 778 days since the WikiLeaks founder was trafficked from the Ecuadorian embassy for a bribe of $4.2 billion to Ecuador from the IMF. 141 days since Vanessa Breitzer's January 6th, 2021 ruling denying Julian Assange bail after the ruling of no extradition, which was on January 4th. So they ruled in his favor and then denied him bail, which is totally logical. 1,440 days of federal incarceration for whistleblower Reality Winner. 1,370 days of inhumane detention for alleged Vault 7 whistleblower Joshua Schultz. 953 days of those, 953 of those days at least, have been spent in special administrative, I can't talk again, Andrew. Special administrative measures. Hopefully it's not as bad as last time, which we've gone over on this show extensively. We should probably do a refresher on how awful it is, because it is truly awful. Let's see, 777 days since the political persecution of Ola Bini by the Ecuadorian government. He still hangs very much in limbo every day. But our two little bright spots are 432 days of freedom for Chelsea Manning. And you can find her on Twitch. Again, I don't know if she still has the same schedule, because I think it's Thursday to Sunday it was. But you can find her at Twitch.
It is a new schedule. She was doing tech stuff on Tuesdays, like
classes, it's hard to keep up with everybody's schedules, y'all, really. So you can find her on Twitch, though, at www.twitch.tv/xychelsea87. And then we also have 80 days of freedom for Jeremy Hammond. So yeah, those are the numbers as of today. We would like to see some more good news on there than bad news. We still need to add Craig Murray. I keep forgetting to look that up and see when he was. We should probably do when he was. What's the word I'm looking for? Yes, and then also, if he ends up in prison, we're gonna have to start counting down those days too. So, or counting up, whatever it is. But anyways, Andrew, what's going on, my friend?
Oh, just another wonderful day in the world. The mayor of Geneva, Switzerland, is putting a thing together with Niels Melzer.
I know, I saw that.
Yeah, which I think is really cool. They're doing a January 5th Human Rights Declaration. So that's pretty cool. I'm sure we'll get to that later. There's a nice little article I found about it here a minute ago. But overall, good. 99 weeks.
I have, do we want to do guests first, or should I do Billboard update first?
Do Billboard update, just because it's super exciting and it kind of goes along with the
I'll try to keep it brief. You guys know I like to blabber on about this because I get really excited about it. But, okay, so the latest contract on the Billboards was paid yesterday. They started at midnight last night, or this morning, whatever you want to look at. So we have the same location that we had before, which is the one that's like right downtown Columbus, Ohio, surrounded by buildings. We kept that one. And then there are two new locations. One is on Dublin Road. One is on High Street. If you want to go check them out, I can give you the addresses. You can shoot me a DM or whatever. So we're going to do those for 2 weeks. And then you guys know that we have the big event coming up on June 14th with special guests. We can't really talk about it too much, but I'm pretty sure everybody can figure out what's going on. So yeah, but we have like a week after this 2-week contract lets up. So we're going to use that week to promo the event. So I think that'll be really great for us to be able to get some more people out potentially. So I'm really excited. And let me check. I should have done this before we started, but I think it was at like 7,700 maybe.
78.22 as of.
Wow. Okay. So it went up $100. Nice. 78.22. So to get the next 2-week thing, because what we'll do is we have that week before the event, we'll do like 1 week of an event billboard, which I already have been on standby for designs. I just need to get specifics. And then the second week we'll just switch back to the original design, because we do the digital billboards. It's very flexible. Like we can like last minute change up the billboard or whatever. It's like a very quick and easy thing. So yeah, that's what we're looking at for billboards. I'm super pumped. I'm going to go try to get some selfies and stuff, because end of the school year is really shitty. I hate it. So there's a lot going on. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to get out there and get some selfies. But the one I'm really excited about, the one downtown Columbus, Ohio, because it really is in a great location. Should I show pictures?
Yeah, you can show pictures real quick.
Let's see.
Because I'm excited about those, because it's literally, one of them is like smack dab in the middle
Okay,
of downtown.
so this one is the one. Yeah, I'll show the one on High Street. Okay, so this is the one on High Street. Okay, so here's the bill. Can you see it? Is it up?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this is High Street. This is all these buildings over here, over here, over here. This is like right downtown. And then that's our billboard right there. So it's in a really good location, right next door to a bank. That's nice. But yeah, so that's the one on High Street. This is, oh, I don't know why that is wrong, the wrong address. Okay, I don't have the other ones pulled up because I got the wrong addresses somehow. But the other one's on Lane Avenue and then also on Dublin Road. So I was just trying to get like a different set of eyes. I did like the one downtown, so I kept that one. I'll probably switch that one up next time too, just to try to get new eyes. And I'm going to have to be more geographically specific because we're going to want them in a relatively close area to wherever we're going to be holding our events so that we can catch eyes in that area. So yeah, that's where billboards stand. Keep donating, keep sharing the link. I'm excited. I'm pumped. Let's go.
Right. And so with that, we have two awesome organizers with us. Returning guest Eric Harvey with the Chicago crew, and first time on the Vigil, Lorese with the Cambria for Assange group, which is, Cambria is the capital of Australia that I just found out like 10 minutes ago. So I just want to thank both of you guys for joining us, and if you could, starting with Lorese, just give people a little bit of information about you and your group and kind of what you've been up to recently.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so you are right, Canberra. I know it's strange pronunciation. Canberra is the capital, and we've got a very small population. It's only 390,000, and it's a very weird place. It's a public service town, and it's actually very difficult to get people to come out on the streets and protest about anything. Sadly, particularly hard to get them to come out for Julian. They'll come out for the environment and recently for Palestine, both really fantastic things. But when we get people from other states together and have something big, that's when we all come out. Like the recent thing we had with the John Shipton Bring Him Home tour, and I think you probably saw that on top of in front of our Parliament House. So we do a lot of, in Canberra itself, we do a lot of social media. We've just started something called Days Out for Julian Assange, because we've realised that while a lot of people may not respond to protests and yelling through megaphones and protest is a bit of an angry thing, we found that people in Canberra respond more to changing their attitudes and their hearts by information. So standing behind an information table and giving them a leaflet, talking to them about it. And I guess it's because Canberra's a public service town. And also some people just won't go to a protest because they don't want to be seen on the nightly news at a protest. Not that the mainstream media covers Assange protests very much, but there is a fear around it. Okay, so yeah, we get together with our mates from Melbourne, Sydney, sometimes far south coast. Australia's a huge place, as you know, so we don't often get together with people from, say, Perth or Darwin. Those places are 3,000 odd kilometres away. We've got some good things happening lately. I think you probably know we've got now 26 parliamentarians out of around 200 who have joined what's called the Parliamentary Group in support of Julian Assange. So we keep working on trying to get more of those to join. We've also had a great win lately. There's a Labor politician by the name of Julian Hill, and he is very vocal about Julian, has had some wonderful things to say in our parliament, and he managed to get the Labor Party to pass a motion at their recent nationwide conference to say that they support Julian. Unfortunately, the leader of the party, Anthony Albanese, has not come out himself publicly, except when he was asked. He just says, "It's about time." No. His favourite thing is enough is enough. And people repeat enough is enough, but that's all he said. Don't know if you know, but just to quickly explain politics in Australia, our loosely left wing would be Labor and our right wing would be Liberal. So, and we do have, in that parliamentary group, we do have independents, we have Labor people and we have Liberal people, which is nice, which was the original unity idea, right? Because if you want to affect hearts on all sides, you have to have a representative there. I think that's enough of a rave. Anything else you'd like to know?
No, that's pretty good. And I'm glad that you talked a little bit about, Labor and Liberal, because I think most Americans have no idea in other countries how it works and who's who. And, so that helps clear things up for people, I think. Yeah. And I think the Australia crew does an awesome job. Like all across the country, really. I mean, there's great groups popping up all over Australia. So that's been really nice to see. And we get it. The States is huge too. We don't get to hang out with our friends on the West Coast. That doesn't happen very often.
Could you
we
talk a
do,
little
but it's
bit,
rare.
just quickly, about the major different groups throughout Australia? Because we've had Ian Rose on, I think at one point we had Michelle and Danielle, who are from a similar area but different organizing entities. So I think it's really cool for you guys in particular in Australia to have so many people and so many groups that do so many different kinds of actions. Because you have some like yours that are very information based and then others that are more street action.
Yes, that's right. Look, as I was talking to Andrew before we came on about the Melbourne group, they're very active, Melbourne for Assange. They do weekly vigils, they do film nights, a lot of street stuff. Their main person is Rain, and she's a powerhouse. She's just got so much energy. She'd be great to have on here as well. As you mentioned, Sydney, Ian Rose. So Sydney and Melbourne are basically about nine hours drive away, so that's doable to get together. And then there's Canberra, Sydney, Melbourne. They're all reasonably close-ish. Sydney, yes, Ian Rose, a long-term activist, does amazing work. People for Assange, Danielle and oh my gosh, I just forgot her sister. Anyway, Michelle, People for Assange. There's Northern New South Wales groups. There's a Perth group. There's Adelaide group. Claire is in Adelaide. There's two groups in Adelaide, actually. Adelaide's at the bottom. And then Tasmania, the little island on the bottom. There's a Hobart group run by Tristan Sykes. They do some terrific things. They've had some town hall events and involving quite a few politicians. Andrew Wilkie, who is our independent, who's been a long-term supporter of Assange and is a parliamentarian, he lives there, so he will often help out the Tasmanian crew. I think we had a Darwin crew that's right on the top for a little while. We do have many in Queensland.
Many. I love hearing all those. There's so many.
Yeah, we've got a lot, and I've just spoken about the main ones that I personally know sort of quite well. I don't know the Perth mob very well, but I did notice last night on Twitter that someone from Perth was there and heard me speak in Canberra at the last thing that we had with John Shipton. And he didn't come up and say hello. And I'm thinking, you're 4,000 k's away. Should have come up and said hello. But anyway, so yeah, it's happening all over the country, definitely. And of course, we have some fantastic Australian journalists, and I'm sure you know Caitlin Johnston from Melbourne.
We love her.
Yes, and our main online, crikey.com, is the only one that's fairly accepted in the mainstream, which is good. They sort of cross over, but they are very, very much for Julian. So some good things. We don't have as many journalists as you do, of course, because your population's incredibly much larger, but we have some very, very solid stuff. One other thing I should mention, and I hope you know about it, is the Assange Freedom Network. Do you know about that?
Yes.
Website? Yeah. I'd personally like to see people get on there and just get off Facebook, but as I said before, Facebook seems to be the place where the audience gather. People are addicted to it, they just won't leave it. But I think in time, as censorship becomes, stronger on Twitter and Facebook, I think we may have to re-congregate somewhere else. So that sort of place would be excellent.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different. I mean, I know that Mark Lubers is working on a platform. Summon, I think. Summon Social, I think is what it's called. Oh, he's gonna be so mad if I'm wrong. But yeah, so I mean, I think we're gonna have some more social media options.
Yeah, and Susie's working on Panquake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think we're going to have some more options. I think we're going to be forced into other options because you're right. The censorship on Twitter and Facebook is only going to get worse.
It is.
Yeah, I don't think there's any avoiding that at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you want Andrew? Do you want Eric to go through what Chicago's doing?
Yeah, for sure. I was actually about to try to kick it over to him. I felt sort of bad.
Oh, I'm Eric Harvey. Before I forget, though, you had mentioned the incarcerated journalists and whistleblowers. I suppose I will be wearing this T-shirt far more frequently. People, unfortunately, will forget another incarcerated journalist and author, Mumia Abu-Jamal, jailed since the early 80s, on death row till the early 2010s, commuted, but he might as well still be on death row given he's had to fight for medical treatments for serious, potentially lethal medical problems. And really his life remains a living hell despite his very meaningful human contributions to true democratic processes and the rights of people who are oppressed. But either way, yes, I'm Eric Harvey, writer, published in 3 languages, German at nachdenzeiten.de, in Spanish at a place in South America, intermedia.press, LA Progressive in the US, and then also with a group that functions in solidarity with the hacker group Anonymous, anonymousworldwide.com. As far as the Assange activism, I'm the organizer for Chicago, the Chicago branch of Assange Defense, which is under the umbrella of the Courage Foundation, headed by Nathan Fuller. And the big thing that's happening right now is we're organizing an event around John Shipton's, Julian's father's visit with Gabriel Shipton, Julian's brother. And right now I'm trying to find a venue that in solidarity will not charge a fee. And, that just started today. And unfortunately, the meeting with Nathan to go through further details needed to be rescheduled, but I will continue to figure this out. And then I guess I'm studying for the Illinois State Bar. I will not be an evil lawyer, though. Maybe all of them say that. And then
yes, all of them say that.
Creation of power. I would like to use the respect and prestige that comes along with that to crush bastards, as the expression goes that Julian has used.
That's my favorite Assange quote. Love it.
Yeah. I'm a fairly combative person who loves or likes to crush bastards. I think that was in the the Alex Gibney documentary, maybe, or the Laura Poitras room. But yeah, so that's what's happening. And I don't know, Peace of Mind was just published at intermedia.press on some legal aspects of extradition and the Assange case, and that's going to hit in Spanish, the same site, I think later today, they said. So
I actually have that turned into a slideshow thing for later in the show.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. There were different iterations of that article. So I really got to be careful with this sleeplessness and the fatigue. I mean, there's a reason the CIA will use sleep deprivation as torture. I should not be saying this with a smile on my face. But
you're tired, so the smile's just there.
Like 1 in the morning, it'll occur to me, oh shit, there's a factual error in the 3rd paragraph. I gotta go fucking deal with this immediately. And then I find all this other shit. But anyway, the version that is present on intermedia.press right now is the perfected one. But anyway, that's all. You've gotten, what I'm doing, the substance of my activism, and a little bit of my eccentricities and neuroses. Probably far more than you wanted. Anyway.
It's like a therapy session.
Yeah, exactly. What is up with this?
You're tired. It makes me laugh because every time you come on, you're tired and you're a little out of it, and it makes me giggle a little bit.
Yeah, but just take it as an indication that I've devoted to the cause to the point that I'm willing to sacrifice my health. I think I keep it together, though.
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah.
We all have
I think we're all
varying
hanging by a
levels of
thread.
insanity.
Yeah, we're all hanging by a thread here, I
So
think.
one of the cool things up in Australia, and I've been praising you guys for this for months now, is the fact that you have so many city councils, like local municipal offices, that have spoken up in favor of Julian. I don't know if you call them city councils or like local parliaments. I'm not sure what that language is between the U.S. and Australia, but
You
in
American.
here we call it our city councils. And it's something that I'm hoping to get local Assange groups to mirror, to reach out to as many local councils, like maybe within their county or within their state, that they can. So could you talk a little bit maybe about how that happened and how, and kind of like the culture, because we were talking before about how many people in Australia support Julian, and then the reaction of the city councils as people were kind of asking for it?
Mm. Yeah, statistically, about 75% of Australians are said to want Julian home and support him. And as far as you're right, there's city councils and there's regional councils, because it's just a city if it's a certain, population. That's the only difference. Now, I don't know a great deal about that because Ian Rose has done a huge amount of work on that. And so basically what people are doing is writing to their different representatives and just saying to them, please support Julian, bring it up at your council meeting and vote on it. And that's been happening. We're a little bit different in Canberra because we've got the federal government and the local government in the one place. So we've kind of got two sets that we talk to. And I kind of concentrate on the federal more, but that's it. It's about writing letters with evidence and making the request. And I'm sorry, I can't list who has joined in and who hasn't. But if Ian Rose were here, he would definitely be able to list all those things for you. He's the expert in that.
Yeah.
I have on our website somewhere a call to action that we put together inspired by that, so I'm trying to find that to put it out in the chat just to see.
Well, we kind of have been talking, like Andrew said, we've been talking about that for a long time. We think that if we can get some local groups to go to their, like if we could get the Tulsa crew to start going to their city council meetings and making the demand that their local representatives support Julian Assange, at some point they're going to have to listen to us. I mean, it's going to be a long slog, especially in the States, because the propaganda campaign against Julian Assange, I don't know how effective it's been in Australia. I think he's got a little bit more of a home field advantage there, perhaps. But in the States, people hate him. They either don't know who he is at all because our media won't touch it, or they are deeply misinformed about who he is and what he's done. So I think it's always going to be hard in the States. That's kind of the fight that we're up against. But I think that going locally and building up local support in city councils and stuff like that, and just kind of taking over could be very effective. I mean, we've been talking, COVID really threw a wrench in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, the thing about Australia is that our liberal right-wing government and our Prime Minister will not, we try and we try and we try. We're desperately trying. We're demanding, we're stamping our foot, we're writing letters, we're doing everything we can to petition him and the Foreign Minister, Lorese, we say, look, just pick up the phone. Call Boris Johnson and call I forgot the name of your president.
Joe Biden. Don't worry, he forgets his name too. It's fine.
I know that's fine. Call the old Joey. Call old Joey and say, look, and they're quite able. We know that they can do that, but they just lie basically and say, oh, we've offered consular support. This is our favourite thing. We've offered consular support, but he's rejected it, which is just nonsense. We don't need consular support. We don't need him to get a new visa or something. We need the man out of there. And our government doesn't have the will to do that. yet. So that's our biggest sticking point. But we're hopeful that with more and more public pressure, and as you said, more and more councils coming on board, making the parliamentary group even larger than the 26 that it is, and with and you did mention, his reputation. Look, when I first got really involved about 4 years ago, when he was still in the embassy as well, it was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking, the amount of slur that we'd see in all of the media. And it was just repeated from really USA propaganda. But it really has changed. In the last year in particular, I would say, it's turned right around. People are more aware. The mainstream media has stopped with the repeating, I don't even want to repeat the stupid stories, but, the Swedish thing, the cat thing, the feces thing, don't even want to go into that absolute crap. But they've stopped that crap. They've now realised that was just ridiculous. And while the mainstream media aren't necessarily positively in support, they are a little bit more even-handed with the reporting. The ABC, who we rely on to be the only non-right-wing media that we have, but it's government-owned, a little bit better than the commercial media. Commercial media is pretty bad, and I'm sure that you know that our media is 75% owned by one man, and that's a right wing person, so that makes it difficult as well. But it's been really it's great that it's the public opinion in Australia has definitely turned. Even in my own family, when people used to say, I'm not interested in that, or would repeat the Sweden thing. Oh, but didn't he? No, he didn't. And I think we've educated people enough for them to realise, oh, okay, that was a smear job. All right, got that.
Yes, I think people are waking up to the power of propaganda more and more.
Yes.
Especially, I think in this case, I think Nils Melzer had a great deal to do with that because he was somebody that 100% bought into that crap. And when he was first approached to look at the case, he was really not interested at all in doing so, but he kind of forced himself to do it anyway. And once he was presented with evidence that was contrary to his, preconceived ideas, he changed his mind. He changed his opinion. And now he's one of our most ardent voices, So I think that he's really shown that that's possible. He came at a good time for me. I tell the story all the time. I was at a point where I was ready to just give the fuck up. I was done. And then came Nils Melzer, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, if that guy can change his mind, then we can do this. Like, we can totally do this. And I think when you show people the evidence, once they are willing to actually look at it for what it is, it's very easy to get them to see what this is. I mean, it's very easy to get people to understand that he exposed the most powerful people on earth. And yes, they have absolutely 100% used every tool at their disposal to destroy him and dehumanize him so that they can manufacture consent for the way he's being treated now. They don't want Julian Assange's. They don't want WikiLeaks. They want to be able to do their corruption and their crimes in the dark. They don't want people exposing that. And I think most people are very I think that's like almost just like ingrained in us. We understand that powerful people seek to control and to hide. So I think that's just showing people the evidence, I think, is just really effective, because once you see it for what it is, I mean, yes, you have to get somebody to step away from whatever biases they're walking into the conversation with, because there are some people who, if they know about Julian Assange, they are, like I said before, grossly misinformed. But I think once you get people to step away from that and like take a deep breath and shake it off and look at it objectively, it becomes quite clear very, very quickly.
Yes, and I think the difficult thing is getting people to do that homework, because I mean the mainstream media is designed to be entertaining, and if people just want to watch the that sort of stuff that they call news, but it's not really news. It's a bit of rah-rah and a little bit about a war somewhere, and then about someone's cat got stuck up a tree, and then the sport,
Joe Biden's dog peed in the hallway, and Jill Biden wears pink
yeah.
scrunchies, and it's nonsense.
And the Kardashians did this, and the royals did that, and
Today I learned that Kim Kardashian is getting sued by like her groundskeepers. That's news for some reason. I don't give a shit. I don't care.
Yeah, it is very difficult to get people to start to to read and do a little bit of research just to get them to notice. And I mean, look, society's designed that way. Everyone's busy. Everyone has to go to work. They have to earn a living. They might have children to look after. Life is busy, and it does take quite a commitment to say, I know life is busy, but if I don't get, as Plato said, if you aren't interested in what your government is doing, then you're destined to be ruled by fools. So it's everybody's responsibility to get a bit informed, but it's just the effort to try and get people to understand that. But you're right, people are beginning to, in bits and pieces, particularly on the dreaded Facebook, with the articles about the kind of spying that's happening and the increased secrecy, and the Australian government has just passed more laws to make it more difficult to protest. And this government has passed 71, I think was the last count. Dr. Lissa Johnson counted them up. 71 new laws are curbing free speech and protest. So that and increasing secrecy. So that is getting increasing, and that's because they're threatened by the new media, by people like us who are spreading the information that we can glean out there. But people are responding to that, and they're no longer willing to go, oh, you can trust the government, because Australia used to be a real culture of that. I don't know how it was in the USA, but it's like, they wouldn't do that. I've had people say to me, oh, they wouldn't do that. And when I said about propaganda on the ABC, someone said, oh, no, that wouldn't happen on the ABC. They have checks and balances. Checks and balances is a really kind of, I don't know.
It's very naive.
Naive, and it's one of those terms. Oh no, rely on the checks and balances. But people are becoming less naive. That's the big message, isn't it? People
I think it's because they're so blatant about it. They don't even try to hide it anymore. They've become just really brazen with their nonsense, and I think that's been very helpful in getting people to move quickly along their journey of realizing that everything is nonsense. I mean, you're being lied to and propagandized daily. It's all around you all the time.
Yes.
So
yeah. I think what really helped in Australia as well is, I mean, the poor fellows, I'm saying helped, but I know you know about David McBride, the military whistleblower.
We love David McBride. I love David McBride. I feel like I always speak for everybody.
Well, he's okay to speak for me on that one.
Okay. So there. Anyway, so David, and then there's we have quite a few whistleblowers who are currently having trials now, and there's a lot in the media about that and about the secrecy around it and the spying scandal that Australia visited upon Timor-Leste a good decade ago. They broke international law, but the people who, and how familiar is this? The people that did it and ordered it, which was under the John Howard government, and his foreign minister Alexander Downer ordered ASIO, or an ASIO officer or several, to bug the Timor-Leste Parliament that Australia had so kindly donated to this nation who'd been in war for so long and needed the help. So they posed as, oh, guys, we'll help you. We'll build your parliament building, but they bugged it. So that is a big scandal. And Bernard Cleary is now, he used to be the ACT Attorney General, and he is, I hope that's not my thing ringing. Oh, it is. Hang on, sorry. Oh my God, it's my daughter. Go away. I'm coming over with biscuits in the living room.
You have no idea how much that happens to me.
I love it. I'm just glad it's not me, because it's, there's usually various noises or cats.
We had
Okay.
raccoons last week. It was fun.
Yeah, he did get the raccoons out. Made me very happy.
At some point, I'd like to address a statement.
Go ahead.
In
I
regards
love that you're so polite about it. Just
well, my mother made me a very polite man. I hope that's evident. Actually, I'd like to say that right now I love my mother very much. I'm very grateful for her. But either way, in regards to people informing themselves of what goes on in the world, you had pointed out that life is so busy, and I had addressed this on Misty's other podcast. And this will get to what one of the greatest things about WikiLeaks is, and then the corresponding tragedy of what's happening to the man who founded and orchestrated all of this, is that, there are mechanisms in place, whether or not they were originally intended to preoccupy people debilitatingly from learning the truth, right? They're not just in America, but elsewhere. People struggle to feed their children and keep themselves alive if, I suppose, they're on the lowest end of the socioeconomic pole. But I also wanted to mention something else. Information can exist, right? And people could have access to it. But then again, where the ability to interpret it is very important. What I'm getting at is that, in line with my mention of Mumia Abu-Jamal, one of the reasons he's so important, there is a race-related component to this and a socioeconomic one necessarily, right? Where at least maybe you could broadly assume that people with access to fewer educational resources are at, a significant handicap versus people who may have the opportunity otherwise to more easily interpret information as a result of superior education. Then I guess, those very people experience their own oppressive systems in terms of the ideological pursuit of a life like the American dream. But nevertheless, and then there's the other thing, having to pay for information, right? There's the added element of that, which also leads me to really respect Wikipedia. So what I just need to point out is there are all these huge prohibitive layers between people's, access to information and the ability to interpret and inform themselves and then engage in democratic processes. But it is so complicated that it makes sense that people who are I've got to get my life together. I got to get my life together. The de-incentivization on meaningful activity in the world, or I shouldn't say meaningful because that places a pejorative judgment on people's subjective understanding of meaning. But at the same time, it is a shame that information needs to be paid for, that there are barriers on the ability to interpret it, and that there is a socioeconomic facet to it and a race-related one. And people who deal in combating these kind of issues, right, the race one, it's just a shame. Again, sorry to harp on Mumia Abu-Jamal, but I just lately
no, I don't think he gets mentioned enough.
Oh
so.
yeah, no, I mean it's interesting. Not even some of the major pop cultural celebrities are even focusing on him anymore. I keep mentioning Rage Against the Machine. They were very active in the 90s at promoting his cause and did something really great in the late 90s in terms of raising a huge amount of money through a tour. But what I'm just getting at is in line with my discussions with Sharon at LA Progressive, and then this piece that I've had to put off on Mumia, is that there is so much in the way of people appreciating the world. They're you mentioned Plato earlier. We're all in the cave looking at forms, right? The representations of ideas without seeing beyond that. I know that's probably a very recondite reference to something, but you had mentioned Plato earlier. And then, of course, there is the thing where people are say the New York Times is marketed as one of these prestigious news institutions that's going to tell you the truth, or CNN or whatever. And Anderson Cooper, oh my God, don't get me started. I dislike him as much as I dislike Sean Hannity.
Come on, he looks great in a tiny t-shirt.
Oh yeah, just getting his jumper or whatever in the middle of a war zone or whatever. It just, I don't know. But what is so beautiful about Julian is the self-sacrificing commitment to information that will lead him to the point where he may end up in prison for 175 years. That information is free. It's also been always subjected to very, very stringent, thorough verification methods that have shown, it's widely recognized, these things are verifiable facts. It is free, and it's organized across the globe digitally, such that it is very, very difficult to disengage and just throw away. But he's an emblem of the antithesis to this bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Of what's happening to him.
Yes, I say that all the time because what WikiLeaks offers us, and I don't mean to like deify Julian Assange or put him on some pedestal or no, he's a human being. I've never met him. I have, that because people do that all the time. Oh, you worship Julian Assange. No, I don't. I just like to keep my free speech and my press freedom and be able to, hold power to account. That's all. But what WikiLeaks offers isn't conjecture. It's not like a bunch of talking heads sitting around a desk on some mainstream media bullshit program lying to you. It's source documentation. It's just the facts. That's it. And yes, Julian Assange or other members of WikiLeaks will occasionally do interviews and they'll talk about or discuss the things that they've released or whatever. But the actual documents themselves, there's no opinion there. It's just source documentation. It is, as Julian says, taking journalism and making it a science as much as possible. And that's what I appreciate. I am very much a fact-based person. I enjoy evidence, and I don't like just trusting people. So if somebody can show me emails or whatever and show me exactly what's going on behind the scenes, and I can observe it for myself and figure it out for myself. Somebody just hands me that information. And yes, Eric, you're right. There's definitely some hurdles to people understanding information and being able to decipher things. And you're absolutely right about that. But just for myself personally, I want the source documentation. I want that. That's, to me, that is so incredibly valuable. And the fact that WikiLeaks has managed to break more stories than like all other journalists combined, essentially, and more important stories. I mean, massive stories, evidence of torture programs and, war crimes and corruption, and not just governmental corruption, but also corporate corruption across the globe. The largest CIA leak in history. I mean, you could go on and on and on. That's massive. And they did it in a way that didn't require any anonymous sources said or nothing. It's just, here's the story. Here's the proof. Sorry, Andrew, go ahead. I was a little ranty there for a second.
No,
Sorry.
you're fine. I was just going to say, look at what WikiLeaks helped reveal about Palestine. The fact that through the disclosures of, I believe it was Cablegate, we found out that the General Intelligence Organization, which is like the Palestinian Authority's CIA, is working hand in hand with the IDF. And
corrupt as fuck. Yeah, and we also learned that Israel likes to use human shields. They like to accuse Hamas of doing that, but in fact, it is Israel that very proudly likes to use that as part of their campaign against Palestine. I mean, it's incredibly important information, and it's bizarre to me that the stuff that's been released from WikiLeaks hasn't been covered more. It's not really, because I understand how mainstream media works, but even we see in independent media, it's like pulling teeth to get anybody to do a story on Julian Assange, and that's independent media, like people who claim to be outside the establishment. This is a story. This is news. This is the greatest threat to press freedom potentially ever. And certainly in like modern history. This is a massive, monumental, historic story. And the fact that I can't get, independent leftists to even mention it is just ridiculous and frustrating.
I think it's because obviously people don't believe, a lot of people just don't believe that their freedoms are under the threat that they are. I mean, activists can see it because we've been reading media for a long time. And going back to what Eric said, unfortunately, sometimes it does take quite some expertise to read media. Perhaps you've had training in it. I have, as an English lecturer. So, but the hearts that we need to win are the ordinary people. And we need to have something that they're willing to read, and when they read it, they get it.
Yes, that's where Kayla Johnstone, I think, is great.
Oh, absolutely.
She's really good at that. And you're right, though. I think that because, and especially in the field of press freedom or free speech, that's such an abstract concept. It's not something that, is in your face every day, like the inability to see a doctor might be, or the fact that you might lose your house due to the economic downturn. Those things hit you in the face every single day. They're unavoidable. But the fact that your First Amendment rights in the States has been systematically chipped away at for decades, that may not be something that people are really paying attention to, and they're not going to until it affects them personally because they are so busy. So I mean, I think that's something, that's another thing, another hurdle that we have to face, is that getting people to even understand the importance of this, let alone like pay attention to it, but then understand the significance of what's happening, which is where I get most frustrated with myself, that I can't find the words to get people to understand how big of a deal this is, because it's massive.
Yeah. I had a little try. I am a writer as well, mostly creative writing. So I had a try on some articles on Medium explaining in terms of history. And I did have young family members that said, oh, now I get it. Because I said, look, it's like this. There's a land way back, call it England, all right, but it's the same. And there's this particularly strong guy, and he decides he'll call himself a king, and so he just takes the land, and there's some peasants around the place that need to grow some veggies. So he says, you can stay on my land, but you've got to pay me. And you've got to pay me in crops, and if your crop fails, well, I kick you out and you starve. Life has not changed since then. Now the king in the castle is the government. The intelligence agencies are the king's men, the soldiers that went out to collect the taxes. So people, and then there was this freedom fighter that came and said, no, king, bugger off. We own the land as well. We have the right to exist, and they sung in taverns, and they printed broadsides, and they made folk songs, and they complained about the king, and then he sent his agents in to spy on them at the local tavern, and then they got the freedom fighter and they put him in the dungeon. Like Julian Assange is our freedom fighter in the dungeon, because he dared to speak out against the king. And so to me, it's I think we need more sort of folk culture around Julian, more folk songs, more understandings from.
He's friend of the show named Jesse Jett that did a spoken.
Yes. Oh, yes, Jesse Jett.
Our friend of the show, Jesse, did a spoken word piece. And
it's
a portion
powerful.
of it that I have ended up using just in my random speeches is that Julian Assange threw his body on the gears of a machine designed to kill us all.
I just tweeted that today, I think.
Yeah. And
I think I just tweeted that today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's starting. There's an anarchist songwriter that's made at least 2 songs about WikiLeaks, if not more. And one of them, he literally filmed outside of Belmarsh prison, playing it live there.
David Rovix. Yeah.
Immortal Technique and R.A. the Rugged Man, 2 big people
Low-key,
here in the U.S. released a song called Who Do We Trust? And it's specifically about the United States government's prosecution of Julian Assange for one of the verses. And in the music video, it literally shows him, Julian's face on the files, and all, it's just a really, who is the girl over in MIA? I think. I don't know, I'm terrible.
I just said that. Yeah, MIA. Yep.
Over in the UK that put out a piece dedicated to Julian. So it's happening, but it's happening slow.
Yes. And of course, there's Roger Waters.
Yes.
Who's
obviously,
he's a huge supporter. Yeah.
He's amazing.
There's a huge amount to unpack over the last few minutes. I can't remember who had mentioned this, but people's not appreciating what the threat inherent in the assault on Julian Assange really means in terms of press freedom. So I actually on Misty's other podcast, Facts on the Ground, the Jamal Khashoggi Press Accountability Act, right? I think was a very, very good way to detract from actually how the U.S. does target journalists. And what are they doing with Julian? Well, at the same time, they're celebrating the need to protect journalists' human rights. So the U.S. will deny foreign aid to governments that are known to persecute journalists. But at the same time, well, they might as well then be bankrupting themselves, right, and doing away with their own money, considering what they're doing to Julian, the U.S. I mean, so we have that, right, and I think any person who's not really paying attention to this idea or allowing themselves to be distracted by the narrative that Julian Assange is a terrorist or a deviant or any number of other things. He's not a journalist. He's not someone who stands for people's human right to self-determination. He's not not a journalist, right? But so we have this Press Accountability Act. So, people can look at it and say, oh, actually, no, the U.S. is very much for press freedom. But then also I had mentioned how on Press Freedom Day, Kamala Harris had tweeted, oh, let's acknowledge this holiday. So great. But at the same time, really, actually, that's just not true of their political, agenda. The other thing I had wanted to mention is that, I think it was Misty had been talking about, the abstraction or the people's grasp of what press freedom really means. And then the other, what I had mentioned on this other podcast was that the exchange of words and language is what creates, intimacy between human beings. And then also on a grander scale, as Julian has written in the introduction to The World According to Empire, the WikiLeaks files, is that, civilizations are organized, the power structures within them are organized in terms of the way information flows through these societies. And whoever holds the monopoly on the information or the control of it and how it's exposed to either people within the highest levels of government or to the people, the ruled class, right? This is what determines the dynamic between the governed and the government and really just everyone involved. And so, it's not, but the thing is, it goes beyond the organization of power structures. So people, determine themselves, in various literary traditions and really just in all places throughout history, by the construction of narrative or in liberating themselves, the reconstruction of it. So any number of people say, behind the existentialists dealing with the threat of fascistic obliteration under the Nazis, what did they do? Sartre and Camus write stories composed of words that were meant to provide an alternative to suicide under the Nazis, the prospect of death and death camps for rightful dissidents. And that solution, right, was a very human one, meant to preserve people's identity. And so this is very abstract, right? We're talking about WikiLeaks releasing very primary sources, documents penned by government authorities, which reveal corruption and brutality. But at the same time, it is also words, and words are the way that people construct themselves and their identities, and the restrictions on that really pose a threat, a human threat. And press freedom, if you go back to the value the founding fathers placed on it against the backdrop of monarchical despotism in the UK, it really had to do, the legislative history behind the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment had to do with, preserving the independence of the US and the identity of the human beings entitled to the First Amendment rights. Of course, that's problematic because they restricted it to white property men, right? But anyway, long-winded answer. Does this make any sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm getting at is Julian is a very humanitarian person. And,
Yes.
and it's not just a threat to press freedom, it's actually a threat to human rights.
Yes.
So yeah.
Well, and that's just made all the more apparent by the insane amount of human rights abuses in his case, the way that he's been treated, the fact that that he was spied on almost the entire time he was in the Ecuadorian embassy, including conversations with his lawyers. That alone should be enough to have this case thrown out the window. The fact that they tried to steal his child's diaper and just all of this stuff is just, it's really been insane. The illegal and arbitrary detention for 7+ years, and the fact that he's been in Belmarsh for 2 years and over 2 years. And it's completely ridiculous. And they're doing it out in broad daylight. But they're able to do that because they can make sure that the media never covers it. Nobody's really paying attention. And those of us that are, they're able to, demonize us or other us or make us into conspiratorial tinfoil wearing asshats who, support this evil comic book villain, that they've made, been able to manufacture it throughout their coverage. So yeah, I don't know. But I do want to quote another piece from Jesse Jess's piece, because this is my favorite part. So if you thought you saw your freedom, then they wanted you to. Human rights are mutable, and Julian is proof. Our First Amendment rights are stuck in solitary too, and the next voice silenced might be you. And that's it right there. It's, I said before, I get it a lot. Oh, you worship Julian Assange, or you're obsessed with Julian Assange. No, I very much see where this is going, and I would really rather not go there. And it's so much bigger than just Julian Assange. I mean, it really is. So he's really just the person who is being used as the tool to silence the rest of us. He's the proverbial head on the stake. He's the warning. Don't mess with us. This is what will happen to you. And so as much as his life is obviously worth fighting for, and he shouldn't be where he is, and all of that is true, it's so much bigger than that. It's so much more important than that. And there's so much more at stake than just that.
So I don't seem insane when I'm talking about the very spiritual consequences of this. Okay,
no.
It's not something I think really.
Not in this crowd.
Okay, so
No.
we're all little, I don't know if the cogs are, yeah. Well, anyway.
Yeah. No, I think we all get it. I think we're all very much on the same page and recognize. I mean, it's really just inherent danger across the board on so many levels.
what was really chilling about the recent court case was that initially the prosecution and comments in USA media and us all over the world claimed that Julian wasn't a journalist. And then during the court case, they admitted, oh, yes, he's a journalist, but he doesn't get First Amendment protection because he's not an American citizen. But on the other hand, we can grab him, and also we can grab anyone anywhere in the world. Oh, and by the way, no one can rely on First Amendment protections. And then the British judge then agreed with everything the prosecution said, and only. And I know I'm preaching to the converted here, but it's going out, so just trying to repeat it. And the judge agreed with the whole judgment, and he was only one in the sense of his health is threatened. So,
which I also found amazing, because then she denied him bail, because she denied extradition because his mental health was in such a poor state. But then she denied him bail, which keeps him in the situation which led to him being in such a poor mental health state.
That's right. That's right.
It makes no sense. There's no logic.
Now we're just relying on the good graces of the next court in the UK.
They're kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, to decide whether or not they're even going to hear the case while he's still in their suffering. And I mean, he has also taken a large risk by doing the cross appeal, which means they could go back to court and the whole thing could be looked at again. But Julian has twice, well, more than twice, but of late sacrificed himself. Once when he didn't take the offer from the US to say who had given him the information on the that Hillary was so upset about, and then this latest thing where he's put himself in danger again with instructing his team to do the cross appeal, and the world needs to see this, that the UK and the USA and the Australian government, all governments, are absolutely thumbing their nose at the rule of law. This is the most chilling thing. We can do whatever the fuck we like. What are you going to do about it? This is the terrifying situation we're in. And one of the lawyers in the UK said that he had high hopes. That was Alexander Mercouris, said he feels like the lower court that Julian appeared in, this is all strategic, he appeared in a lower court by not an incredibly experienced or qualified judge, and he feels that when it goes to the next court, that the next court, if they hear it, are very much see themselves as separate from government and more secure and not as easily manipulated politically. That's what he I don't know how strongly he believes. I don't know whether it's his belief or his hope. Right. Both, I suppose. So this.
I mean, this is terrifying, though. You're right, because this essentially gives the U.S. and its allies global jurisdiction over journalism and information. They're giving themselves the power to go get anybody, anytime, anywhere that prints or says something that they don't like and that embarrasses them. And that I don't know about you guys, but these are crazy people. They're psychopaths. I don't want them with that kind of power.
Exactly.
Exactly. I mean, you're addressing a great deal of arbitrariness, and actually I've wondered a lot why the prosecution or the defense in the case right now chooses to focus on whether or not he's a journalist. Like, yes, he is a journalist. It should be self-evident. But at the same time, you know, I was reviewing this article by a UCLA professor of law, Eugene Volokh. I think that's how the name is pronounced, but I had to look it up again because I forgot. But freedom for the press is an industry, or for the press is a technology. And what I'm getting at is actually the language in the First Amendment, freedom of the press. That doesn't refer to the colloquial understanding of that term we have today, which is like news media. So NBC or New York Times. It actually refers to the printing press. And actually Glenn Greenwald has discussed this, and I can't recall the name of the article, but it was in The Intercept. And actually that word, the press, right, referring to the printing press, refers to the activity of publishing. So let's contend still, right, that Julian Assange is a journalist, but actually, is that the heart of the issue? Who cares if he's a journalist? He still is a publisher, right? Just consider exactly what he does. He obtains information by any number of means from anonymous sources and then puts it out on a platform. That is publishing. So who cares if he's a journalist? That First Amendment entitles publishers, right, to this protection.
It entitles all of us. We all have First Amendment rights. All of us.
Oh, sure.
All of us. That's what. No, but I'm just saying it's very bizarre to me that's ever entered the conversation, because if you're going to subject him to our laws, then he should also be subjected to our legal protections. But they don't see it that way. So, I mean, all of us have First Amendment rights in the United States. And if that's what we're basing this off of, United States law, then if he's subjected to those same punishments, then he should also have those same protections. And we all have those. So it doesn't matter if he's a journalist, he still has First Amendment rights. That's still a thing. This is why we say we are all Assange, because this really can come back on every single one of us.
And the prosecution argued in court that it would.
Yes.
The U.S. prosecution was literally forced to admit that if you retweeted something that had classified information in it, whether it was in the public light or not, you can go to jail. You can be found guilty of the Espionage Act for a retweet or a like.
Yeah. That's why Bernard Cleary in Australia is on trial. He's a lawyer, and he's being attacked merely for receiving from his client material, a classified material, merely for reading it and acting in his client's best interest. So, it's all over the world. And Australia, by the way, I don't know if you know, Australia has no Bill of Rights. We have no Bill of Rights. We have a very, very old constitution that hasn't changed since it was written. And we just have assumed, we assume we have rights that we technically don't. So we're in a much worse position as far as that goes. We can't call on a First Amendment, a freedom of the press.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
It is terrifying.
Every time I think about that, I'm like, wow, because I mean, we have it pretty bad in the States, and they will absolutely abuse their power on, it doesn't matter, on anything. But then to not even have the ability to potentially use that as a defense in court or whatever, that's scary. That's scary. I mean, when we watched the ABC be rated, and I'm like, they're rating them like on TV, they're rating. And I mean, they do the same stuff here. It's just not as obvious because we do have the First Amendment rights. So yeah, that's terrifying. That's a really scary thing.
Yes,
we actually had one of our good friends of the show, Krish Mohan, on, and got to break the news to him that 100 years ago Australia broke British power but never actually declared rights of their own. And he was just like mind blown that there was no Bill of Rights.
Shout out to Krish.
Press protections.
Yes, yeah. Well, we had a prime minister, the best prime minister this country has ever had, a very left-wing prime minister by the name of Gough Whitlam, and he was sacked by the Governor General and he conspired with the CIA and with the Queen to sack our prime minister, because he was only the second prime minister in our history that questioned the right of the USA to be in Pine Gap near Alice Springs, and he wasn't anti-American by any means. He was pro the relationship, but he did not want Australia to be dictated to. He was gotten rid of. And I remember years ago, Gough himself said, the CIA had a hand in this. The whole of Australia laughed. They thought, oh, little Australia, oh, for goodness sakes, how could the CIA? And the same thing, they laughed when they said that the Queen had a hand in it. And now the documents have been released on both counts. It's absolutely true. It's not little Australia. We are strategically so important to the USA. Now, I can't remember why I started to go. Why did I go down that path? I think it was to do with rights. That's right. So we just have assumed we assume our rights somehow through British law still, but we don't have those protections. That's right. I started talking about our current Prime Minister. We had what's called a sports rort. There was a federal minister, a female, who mismanaged funds that were out there to give to various sports clubs around the country. And what she did was she ignored the public services recommendations and she gave them all out to people in the Liberal Party, and they're in power in government, just to remind you. When this was found out and it was broken, and then the government did a inquiry into it, the Prime Minister was asked, when will you release the inquiry? And he said, oh, I'm not going to release it. That's government business. That's secret government business. So in this country, our Prime Minister can make anything secret government business, even corruption just over sports field, for crying out loud. So that's where we are. And we are rapidly falling into, a fascist system here, and of course, all over the world. And one day it's going to bite us on the bum badly, because, as we kept saying, we do not have the First Amendment rights that you have. We do not have a Bill of Rights. We're just sort of relying on the good graces of our nice government, who surely has checks and balances.
And they totally have your best interest at heart.
Oh yes, they love us. They
work for you. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. Everything's going to be fine.
Yeah. But the strange thing, though, about a contrast between the USA and Australia is we have universal free healthcare. You guys don't, and that is left over from this lovely left wing. Gough Whitlam did incredible things in 2 years, more than anyone's ever done to look after the people, such as no fault divorce, free education, free healthcare, all of this stuff. Subsequent governments have not been able to take that away from the people, and yet, strangely, I hear from the USA. The government paying for healthcare in the USA is seen as some sort of communist plot. You
have no idea.
Another indication for the low respect on human rights. I'm not sure people appreciate. I mean, at one time, well, actually, as so many people were up until recently, I was exceedingly poor, had no health insurance, and this was as a result of the pandemic. There were exorbitantly high medical costs as a result for some serious things that happened a while ago. And, I am like an affluent person who comes from a fairly, well-to-do family. Of course, I am of the age where I'm separated from them, but in that regard. And like the amount of stress that is placed on people without healthcare, who then go into emergency type situations and rack up bills in ER rooms, right? This country is actually not the emblem of respect for human rights type place that it is.
No.
And it is a shame, right? That, they're, communist plot, right? Free healthcare. What is that about?
Taking care of people is a commie plot.
Oh, yeah.
It's terrible. It's the year 2021 and the goddamn United States of America, and we can't take care of sick people. We can blow shit up all day long, but we can't take care of sick people because that's communist.
And you know what we all need to do now, as I speak? Check under your bed for the Reds and then dump them in.
I don't know if you know this, but I'm Putin's buddy. So
yeah, I know.
America is the only country to drop an atomic bomb on two different cities and in the 40s, right? And
we're the world's largest terrorist organization. Period.
Yeah, they dropped Agent Orange on little children, as Nick Cute captured in the Napalm Girl, that photo of that North Vietnamese girl covered in skin burning, deforestation agents, right? We don't have free government, healthcare. Oh yeah, America is really all for respecting human rights, I would say.
No,
so,
it's a joke. It makes me giggle every time one of these douche canoes of a politician tries to pretend like we're the bastion of human rights, or that like when somebody else commits a human rights offense, we are just clutching our pearls. We can't imagine that somebody would dare do such a thing. Meanwhile, we're poisoning the people of Flint still,
right?
Like 6 years later.
Or whatever, dictator of Azerbaijan.
Yeah,
in an interview with a Western reporter says,
yes.
Well, what about Julian Assange?
When that guy can make you look like an asshole, you need to reevaluate your life.
The other thing, I could be wrong, just going back to that Jamal Khashoggi Press Accountability Act. I ingest a lot of information on, and it's been a while since I've read about this. From what I understand, it's actually an almost nominal revision of the act passed following Daniel Pearl's beheading. In other words, it's really just a redundant iteration on denying foreign aid to governments that assault the human rights of journalists. It really is just another act that says, okay, If you assault a journalist, if you kill a journalist, you're a foreign country, you don't get US aid. That's another indication. Like, this is just a nominal revision, right? So actually, maybe it's just like, another distraction. We already had the Daniel Pearl Act. So, I mean, I could be wrong. There could have been other elements within that. But just like speaking again,
It's a distraction.
It's a distraction, right?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
I mean,
It's the way that they can make themselves look like they give a shit without actually giving a shit. And our politicians are extremely gifted in this area. They're very good at doing that.
If I'm describing the distinction between the two inaccurately, I want anyone to tell me I'm wrong. But from what I understand, it actually is not substantively different, like substantially different from the Daniel Pearl related act in this regard. So anyway, sorry, that just occurred to me. But okay.
Yeah, no, that's a good point to make.
Mm.
Absolutely correct. It's ridiculous when the United States tries to pretend like they give a shit. It's just really, and the fact that there are still people, like grown-ass adults, who buy into that after all. I mean, I say this all the time, but how many times does your government get to lie to you before your sense of skepticism kicks in?
Right,
Seriously.
like the
Seriously.
Colonial pipeline
Short
situation.
memories.
Have you heard about what was happening with that, Misty?
What, the Colonial?
Yeah.
Yeah, now they don't know. Now, we don't. Sorry, we're gonna have to look at this again. This is like the 6th time they've had to like reevaluate this massive historic oil spill or gas spill. Sorry.
So apparently that organization, Dark Side, whatever the fuck they are, private intelligence, what have you, only hijacked their billing system, and then the CEO said, "Hey, turn off the pipe."
Yeah, they shut down an entire pipeline that goes through, I think, 6 states, just because they couldn't bill anybody. Yes, it's been leaking since August of 2020.
Reportedly.
Yes, it's been. Yes, it's been for a long time. Some teenagers had to find out about this pipeline spill. We can't get anybody in the mainstream media to cover it, despite the fact that I have repeatedly annoyed them on Twitter. Bill McKibben did respond to me and said, "Oh, hey, with everything else going on, it's something I didn't see." And I was like, "Cool, he's actually going to talk about it." He gave us 2 sentences in his blog. So Robbie Yeager has been doing incredible work on that. I highly suggest everybody go check out his relentless coverage of the Colonial pipeline spill. It is a historic leak, and the fact that nobody's talking about it is ridiculous. If you care about the environment, it's so bizarre to me that we are willing to make excuses for people like Bernie Sanders or AOC or anybody else that pretends to claim or to care about the environment. We can't get them to mention this at all. They won't even talk about it. They won't even respond to us. So yeah, these are not people who really give a shit about the things they profess to care about. That's a slogan for to get your vote. That's it. That's all it is. It's platitudes to get your vote, and then they're moving on. And they'll just keep using that against you. So yeah, the Colonial pipeline spill is a huge story that once again, our media is failing on us. So yeah, everybody should go check out Robbie Receipts. He's amazing. And he's my Twitter husband. So I'm almost...
There's like a conjugal system in Twitter. I wasn't aware of this.
No, there was like this weird thing where like your first at is your husband or whatever. It was like some app that like put you, and Robbie kept coming up as my husband. So he's my Twitter husband. And yeah, that's whatever. So I feel like I should be forced to talk good. No, but he does great work. And the Colonial pipeline spill is a huge story. And so far the estimate was 1.2 million gallons. And again, they're now potentially revising that again. And they're just straight up saying, we have no idea what's happening, basically. We just don't know. We don't know. We don't know if we even have the ability to measure it at this point. We have no idea. And this is a pipeline that goes through like 5 or 6 states. I can't remember for sure. Robbie's going to kill me. But the pipeline in most places is more than 40 years old. It's older than me. And they're only required to check a certain percentage of it like once every 5 years. It's ridiculous. This is a pipeline that's like going underneath people's houses and land and food sources and water sources. And it's crazy that but this is what happens when you allow lobbyists to take over and then they write their own rules. And then when they fuck up, they get to investigate themselves. That's not a good system.
Yeah.
That's not working out so good.
And then they get to keep the investigation secret, the results secret.
Right.
Well, that's the same way
essentially
that it works
what's
with
happening.
War crimes, right?
Yes.
Because eventually it'll come back to the reporter is the bad guy for letting all of you know that we lied to you.
Yeah. I mean, the only person in jail or the only people that get punished are the people who expose the crimes, not the people that commit them. I mean, look at John Kiriakou. only person to see any jail time. Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange, only people to see any jail time. None of those people that committed the war crimes have ever seen the inside of a courtroom.
Yep.
What kind of society is that?
That's
We have
right.
it bass backwards.
Yep. I don't know how we're going to achieve this, but we somehow need to, in both of our nations, and the UK is the same, we've got this revolving binary thing that just, and I remember a writer many years ago, Irigare, talked about gender issues as being just like a spinning top, you know, and someone's at the top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, and our political system's the same. And people have such short memories. You know, they hope for better things. Oh, we'll get this government out and we'll get the next one in, and the next one will come in, and they stand up and give these wonderful speeches and make these promises, and people believe it. People believe it.
People believe they were going to push Joe Biden to the left. Joe Biden, the man has been a public figure in politics for nearly 50 years. He has always been unbelievable, just unrepentant piece of shit, right-winger, racist, like just dog shit of a human being. But we're gonna push him left. Okay.
Yeah. The biggest warmonger. I saw the film of him, you know, arguing in your, I know you don't call it parliament, your government, about the inquiry, should we go to war with Iraq. I mean, he was much younger.
He is
man,
a dumpster fire of a human being. Real talk.
Yeah, big, you know, warmonger. And face it, let's call him a war criminal.
Yes, he's a war criminal. He's a warmonger. He's a racist. He's a misogynist. He's at best grossly inappropriate with young girls.
Yes.
I would venture on saying pedophile, but you know, for legal reasons, I'll just say that he's grossly inappropriate with young girls, because I don't know anybody that can watch those videos and be okay with that. I'm sorry. No.
I don't like the smell of your shampoo.
No, it's so disgusting. I mean, I think most girls have been that little girl where some creepy old dude thinks that he has the right to put his hands on you. And it creeps me out every time I see him. I don't know how how the fuck did this dude get elected the president of the United States?
Well,
Seriously.
look at the scarier
Seriously.
thing, right? The Hunter Biden laptop thing, where it literally showed Hunter Biden butt naked in front of his 13-year-old niece, and messages from the Biden family asking him to be less sexual with their young relatives. Like, that's the family that's elected president. A man whose laptop literally was found, and there's videos of him pacing around naked, doing cocaine, explaining how he sold himself out.
And
to
that
one
guy
of the
was
most
seen as like the
powerful
lesser
people
evil
in China. Like, it's insane the amount of information that's out there that people just don't even know about right now.
Well, and if they know about it, they're willing to brush it off because the orange man's bad. We can't have Trump, so we got to vote for the other fascist. We're going to defeat fascism by voting for a fascist. It's completely illogical, but that's the United States election. That's electoral politics ain't it. I don't know how many times I have to say it. We are not going to get change through electoral politics in this country. It's not going to happen. We are too far gone. It is far too corrupt. You are wasting your time if you are trying to transform the Democratic Party. That's not happening. Bernie Sanders has been trying to do that for 5 years, or at least that's what he claimed he was trying to do. The party's worse than it's ever been. They elected Joe Biden. Again, a full-on Republican. Like, this is not negotiable. This dude is a Republican. He has been his entire career. And that's who the Democratic Party anointed to presidency. And when they did that, they screwed Bernie Sanders over again for the second time. And for the second time, he didn't say jack shit. So please stop telling me that you're going to transform the Democratic Party. That's not happening. That is a fairy tale. Stop it.
You know, I wanted to ask you a question, and it has to do with your mention of Joe Biden as a racist, which is an assessment I agree with. But, you know, I've often thought of Kamala Harris as a token black person to place in office to offset memory of the 90s crime bill. Plenty of people have talked about this, but, you know, I mean, just, you know, the manipulation of like representations of reality is as much a part of Biden's presidency as it been every others. But I guess I just wanted to ask your opinion of that idea of Kamala Harris as a token black person to distract from the 90s racism that You know,
Who are you asking?
Oh, any one of
because I have lots of things to say about that.
Well, no, it's something that's occurred to me a lot.
This whole woke bullshit, this whole representation amongst imperialism, and oh well, women are dropping the drones now, so it's fine. That's fucked up, and I'm so sick of it. Like when Kamala Harris was elected vice president or anointed to vice president after not winning a delegate, people should be happy now because my young daughters have a role model. No, are you kidding me? I would consider myself an extreme failure as a mother if my children were looking up to the likes of Kamala Harris. She is a dog shit of a human being. This is not somebody I want my kids looking up to. These are people who are corrupt to the core. They're psychopaths. I don't think that that's hyperbolic to say. These people are legitimate psychopaths. They are more concerned. They are narcissistic. They are more concerned with their own personal benefits. And do you know what I'm saying? Like, no, I can't even with, having a black guy run this or having a gay person run that. That doesn't matter. If you're still evil and corrupt and war criminals, I don't care. I don't really think that the people of Palestine give a shit if a black person sold the weapons to Israel that are going to kill them. I don't think that they give a shit. Nobody cares. Like the representation in the woke politics, the identity politics of imperialism. No, it's dumb. I'm so over it. Sorry. This will get me going because it pisses me off to no end because it is emotionally manipulative and it's not okay. And it's very effective. That's the problem. It's very effective.
And you could have just been describing Australia. You could have just been describing the UK. And I mean, the big question is, which we won't solve, but how the fuck do we how do we stop this binary system? What do we do? I mean, short of a revolution and yeah.
Well, I'll give Edward Snowden credit for it, even though it's something that we started saying on the Vigil from the very beginning. A violent revolution, all it does is put the most violent individuals back on top.
Back.
Right?
Of course, I don't want that.
The model that we have to look to is changing people's hearts and minds one by one to change what they accept as acceptable in society.
You sound like a Nazi collaborator. I get that all the time because I'm willing to talk to people that I don't agree with.
But I think the way it kind of falls on our community of free Assange activists is to be the glue that brings other activist communities together. Because whether it's the environmental community that WikiLeaks helped out with the Milton Report, helped out by exposing the International Panel on Climate Change's like blatant manipulation of data, whether it's BLM activists who are literally normal people that just videotape police brutality and post it on the internet. Because all of that is journalism. Whether you're releasing a story that is super big and super punchy about an environmental disaster or a video of a man getting killed next to a car that's 17 minutes long, both of those things are journalism. And getting all of
those issues are directly impacted by propaganda, and that is what Julian Assange and WikiLeaks and the fight that we're in right now, that is 100% what that's about. And that's why I try to express to people that this is the front line for everything else. You can't fight for anything else unless you fight for this, because I mean, if you just look at Wendell Porter, he's a health insurance whistleblower who used to literally write propaganda for health insurance companies, manipulating people and misleading the American public about the Canadian healthcare system. That's what he did. That was his job. And that is a huge part of the reason why we don't have universal healthcare in the United States of America, because propaganda is extremely effective. And so that really is the front line of everything else. If you care about anything else, you need to care about what's happening to Julian Assange, what's happening to press freedom, what's happening to the First Amendment, what's happening to free speech. It's all directly impacted by this fight. And I mean, I don't mean that to sound like self-aggrandizing or whatever. I'm just telling you the facts. You're not going to be able to fight for ending the wars, healthcare, education, the environment, nothing else, if you cannot combat the propaganda effectively. They have complete control over the narrative. Narrative control is a monumental problem. And in this country, like 90% of our media is controlled by 5 corporations. That's a problem. We are being force-fed bullshit and lies that are directly impacting our ability to fight for the things that we care about, period. Sorry, I got a little ranty again. I'm on a thing.
A term I consider so operative in what you just said there is narrative, which goes back to that what seemed like probably the crazy rantings of a madman about the construction and reconstruction of narrative and the circulation of words and in determining power structures and the relationships between human beings, both outwardly and their relationships with themselves. maybe I have an opportunity now to redeem myself for going on and on a moment ago. But you know, you were talking about revolution and quoting Snowden. This makes me think of another thing from the book by Abu Jamal, Live from Death Row, and this has to do with the difference between violent revolution and one based in nonviolence. And then it also makes me think about, you know, his deconstruction of like what goes on in the juxtaposition between like the civil rights leader Martin Luther King and the, you know, Black empowerment activist Malcolm X. Right, two different terms: civil rights and Black empowerment. And so he says that, you know, in the course of U.S. history, since you know, Malcolm X was killed in the mid '60s, there's been such a fetishization around, you know, just across the political spectrum of MLK and his nonviolence as the way to be, at the expense of detracting from, you know, the idea of violent revolution is perhaps, given that I don't think nonviolence has ever done much, right? The de-incentivization of more active forms of reform. Like reform is not, you know, a viable option. Now, I don't know if this is a good thing to say because I'm a gentle person and I don't believe violence is ever merited, but like, just look at a number of things. Like, people will necessarily dismiss the people that looted stores, the BLM activists. But at the same time, you know, what has reform done? What has nonviolent reform done? And then also, people will so easily dismiss the members of the Weather Underground, the founders, right, Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dohrn. But at the same time, the philosophical underpinnings of what they did was America exists in a bubble. And back then they wanted to bring the war home. And so violence was brought into the picture. And so what I guess I'm just saying is, like, what does changing the hearts and minds of people look like, right?
So I think,
You know, does it do anything?
I think in 2021, with the way the media has the ability to make anyone love or hate anybody, like literally at the drop of a dime, any violent revolution, if it is loved and accepted, will be the CIA or a cutout organization using that to implement greater force across society. And I think 40 years ago, 80 years ago, 200 years ago, violence was an acceptable option for solving situational problems. But we're in a state now where the intelligence community knows every single thing about every single one of us and every single button that we have, right, through their use of manipulation. So at this point, it's literally saying, getting individuals to rise up and say, I would rather be dead than exist in your society. Here I am, come and get me. I'm going to do everything I can to educate as many people. So when you come for me, you have to come for my city.
Yeah.
And when they come for your city, what does your city respond with in self-defense? Because
Exactly.
that's not the direction of any individual to choose at that point. It is the
We
community's
can't
vote on
out-violence
how
the
to continue
state.
forward.
No.
We can't out-violence the state. We can't. I mean, listen, there's a huge possibility that there's likely going to be violence. We see it now. I mean, look at any given protest that you see right now. They're being brutalized by cops and run over by cops and, you know, shot with rubber bullets and all that good stuff. So we're already seeing violence from the state. I mean, that's nothing new, but I think it's definitely going to escalate. But I don't think it's going to be a very effective method because you just cannot out-violence the state. They have managed to get so much power, control, and weaponry that,
you know, just something very tragic to observe is, okay, so in the late 1960s, Fred Hampton, this will seem like a non sequitur, but maybe I tell stories this way. Fred Hampton was murdered by CPD officers, right, while he was sleeping next to, I believe, his pregnant girlfriend
yes.
in a Black Panther kind of dormitory, right, in Chicago. And after that, Mumia Abu-Jamal was called to deliver, you know, a eulogy. And in the eulogy, he quoted Mao Zedong as saying, "Power grows out of the barrel of a gun." There's a number of things to say in this regard. Power grows out of the barrel of the gun, said by, you know, the communist leader, right, Mao Zedong, had to do just with a very just rational assessment of violent resources that have been employed in order to enforce authority and then construct governments that then can, you know, just like self-perpetuate and just govern people. But at the same time, then just quoting Mao Zedong later in the 80s, while Abu Jamal was on trial, wrongfully claimed to have killed a police officer, the prosecutor referred to this statement, his quoting Mao Zedong, as an indication that he was into violence for violence sake and that he was a violent criminal. But at the same time, actually, originally, Mao was just referring to like this analysis of history and how people come to power and maintain power. It has to do with resources. the use of them. And oftentimes, like absolute power corrupts absolutely, what a trite expression but true, it will be used to abuse people. But like, what is, I mean, just like nonviolent reform, I don't know that it's done anything. And then even to suggest, like right now I'm thinking of probably alienating a lot of people, even to quote a guy who was looking at the use of violent resources, like he ends up on death row for 20 years or something, and now in prison for the rest of his life. So yeah, anyway.
The state will bring the violence to us. They already are. And then when they bring the violence to us, they'll also dress as us and pretend to be us. Mm-hmm. And then in the media, they'll say, see these people. I mean,
I mean, listen, I'm going to get a lot of shit for saying this, but I don't understand why it's not apparent that that's what happened at the insurrection. And, you know, it's what they do to Black Lives Matter protesters. Oh, yes. Look at these thugs. They're causing chaos. They're destroying property. They're doing, I mean, it's the same manipulation that they use. And really, it's just to pit us against each other and to other us. And, you know what I mean? And to keep us distracted from the real fight here. You know, that's all that is. And they're again, very, very good at this. They are really good at this game. And that really is, again, why I focus so much on propaganda, because that's everything. Narrative control, that's everything. Because, you know, they're able to control every aspect of what we read, see, hear, know, think, listen to. I mean, it's algorithmically, and it's just straight up propaganda. It's advertisement placement. It's all of that stuff. And it's working against us literally from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to sleep. You are being force fed propaganda from all angles, unless you like shut yourself in and don't do anything, or, you know what I'm saying? Like it's really pervasive.
Yeah, from an Australian point of view, looking on to the Capitol, what happened at the Capitol, you know, people I spoke to, we could see, and you could tell me from your point of view because it's your country, we saw several things happening. We thought, okay, some of those people are absolutely desperate. They've had a gutful of being lied to. They're starving, literally. They need food. They can't live. They've lost their homes. They believe the idiot orange man that he was there for the people, because they all say, oh, I'm there for the people. They believed that, they thought they could make a difference. They weren't violent, but they wanted to yell and scream and say, I've had a fuck enough of this shit. And then there were probably some agitators, there were some violent types that went off their own bat to get in there and, you know, cause a bit of
stir shit up. We know that. They've been exposed.
The thing that they didn't, so myself and Steve supposedly, like, it's pretty obvious, we put the videos
allegedly they were there that day.
And it's crazy to have been present at a false flag event, because I was personally canvassing the January 6th, like 200,000-ish person rally happening a quarter mile away from the Capitol building at the time where the violent speech was being given with a megaphone chanting and drowning out the sound of Trump that just said, pardon Julian Assange. We went back to the Airbnb for about 45 minutes. In that time is when the shooting started in the Capitol building. Supposedly, there was a group of individuals that just happened to show up and drop a Free Assange banner off of the side of the building, allegedly, of the Capitol
Those were
building.
Nice people, though.
And allegedly there was people there chanting, pardon Julian Assange, holding up banners and posters that transformed storming the Capitol into a Free Assange event, because we were there and present.
Make every event an Assange event.
We did not see that.
Of course not.
I'll send you the videos, because it was absolutely crazy.
I mean, to me, and I wasn't there that day. I left that morning. We had events because of the extradition ruling. We had events in DC in the days leading up to that. So I left that morning. And I mean, it was very, very apparent. Just being in town, the days leading up to it, everybody was talking about it. There was no surprise that there was this event that was going to be taking place. And then all of a sudden the Capitol Police are like just completely unprepared. Come on, like the dudes at the gas station. I went to buy like a shit ton of Dunkin' Donuts and coffee for one of our actions, and they were talking about it there. Like they were talking about it. Everybody knew it was coming, and then all of a sudden they're ill prepared. I mean, it was just an obvious psyop in my opinion. And you're right. There were people there who were genuinely there because they've been propagandized to be mad at the wrong people and the wrong things. And, you know, they've been screwed over and they're angry and they don't really know where to direct their anger. And so this felt like something that they could go and just like, yeah, I mean, it's like when we walk through the streets of DC yelling, fuck the CIA and fuck the FBI and free Julian Assange, that feels great. It feels good. And so I get those people, but then there were also absolutely agitated. They've been exposed. And so, you know, but that's what they're going to use for Patriot 2.0. They're going to use this to take away more of our rights. They're going to use this. The Democrats are going to use this for the next, however long it's going to be until terms. I can't, what month is it? Whatever. But they're going to,
the Buffalo guy in the pictures that they show, like the dude in the Capitol. So the night before on January 5th, he was working security for the Young Trump Stop the Steal event. And he was literally just marching around the crowd in one direction. And I had my megaphone that had Pardon Julian Assange going, and I was going around. And that guy that got arrested literally at one point had a 40-minute conversation with me about why this was so important and what was going on. So I don't know. Like, hopefully that's how change happens. Hopefully it's people that get put into those situations that understand.
Again, Andrew, you sound like a Nazi collaborator. Why are you talking to people that you don't agree with on everything ever?
Hey,
that's ridiculous.
We got to stand in front of Pastor Mark Burns, the guy that put out the fake tweet about Trump pardoning Julian, and get a whole crowd of people to chant at him, "Pardon Julian Assange."
That guy he can fuck all the way off in all the ways possible. Yeah. That was a scumbaggy thing to do.
I think there was a really telling moment that we did see on our mainstream media here. The camera goes right up to someone. Don't know if it's the guy who had the horns and everything, but he was yelling into the camera, you did this to us, or you are doing this to us. And I think that's one of the truest things. Look, see this mayhem, see all this shit, whether it's PSYOP, whatever, you, as in the government, you're doing this to us.
There's another, I hate to do this, but there's another amazing Jesse Jet line. You can't keep giving us nothing and think that we're bluffing about coming for your heads. And that's the truth. You can't keep fucking people over and not expect for them to be done. I mean, there's only so much that people can take. And so, I mean, just the angry people are going to come for you. I mean, I'm not saying that in like a violent sense, but in this country, you have a right to redress your grievances against your government. You have a right to protest and to assemble and to, you know, and to get out there and make your concerns heard. And the fact that it's treated like it's some like historical crazy event that's like earth shattering and everybody needs therapy now. And I mean, it's such an obvious circus sideshow. Like this is all just a distraction. This is another methods of keeping us divided so that we don't focus on the real problem. My enemy is not some dude wearing horns at a Trump protest. My enemy wears a $5,000 suit and sits in a boardroom. That's it. I'm not worried about some dude with horns. I'm not worried about that guy. He has no money. He has no power. He has no influence. I'm not worried about him. I'm worried about the people who, you know, sit in boardrooms and make decisions and are, you know, actively trying to kill us all, essentially.
I'm worried about the people that wrote the propaganda that he believes that he was willing to go to the point of getting himself arrested, storming the Capitol in an obvious psychological operation.
Yes, those are the people that also sit in boardrooms. Yes. I mean, it's really frustrating to me. I deal with this a lot because I am somebody who is willing to have conversations with people I don't always agree with, which is really bizarre to me that that's a controversial thing because I'm surrounded by people I don't agree with. I mean, you work with people you don't agree with. Are you like shun them and not speak to them because they maybe voted the wrong way in your opinion? It's just so infantile and dumb. So,
you know, I mean, I one of the reasons I loved where I went to college, and you would expect them, given that their, you know, coat of arms reads communism, atheism, free love. I don't know. Reed was amazing insofar as people were not actually very restrictive on the way they discussed ideas. And so people could bring up very controversial things. And then so later in history, actually, I've noticed one of my favorite people is a friend from high school who ended up working for the Trump administration. And there are a number of things to say in regard to this guy. It is cool to be around people who disagree with you, given they'll challenge you, and then you have the opportunity to either reinforce your arguments with them or understand maybe you're on the wrong side of truth. But just as an aside, he told me that while he was working towards the end, a lot of people under Trump, including him, were pushing for a pardon for Julian, but that ultimately Trump did not pardon him. But actually, there was a great deal of advice being lodged at the former president to do this.
Yes.
But in regard to people disagreeing with you, it actually is quite a gift when someone will be vehemently disagreeing with you for the reasons I mentioned. And it's unfortunate that like relationships will fall apart. Like I do remember friendships. I never alienated like this guy who worked for the Trump administration. He actually was a writer for Breitbart at one point. Now he's actually having worked for Trump and realizing he's a total fucking asshole, that he's kind of shifted back towards the left as he was more so in high school. But, for example, following my divorce when I was dating again, there were women I would see who, when I wore a Free Assange t-shirt, not see me again because they alleged he's a rapist. And even when I said, well, first of all, there's some evidence to the contrary. However, if he did that, he should answer only for that, if that's the crime that actually occurred, if it did. But they didn't want to see me again. And that's fine. But it's just interesting to know people's inability these days to connect when disagreements occur. And that's a shame.
Yes, and it's so it's self-defeating. I don't know how you expect to get anything accomplished if you aren't even willing to have conversations with people who that's how you get things done, by changing people's minds. That's how you affect change, is by getting more people on your side, and you can only do that by talking to people. I mean, I don't know if you guys know this, but ignoring problems doesn't make it go away. So, if you want to end racism, how do you expect to do that? By shaming and dismissing and degrading people who have casually racist opinions? Or as a white person, should I be willing to go into white spaces and try to affect some level of change? Or, do you know what I'm saying? Like, have those conversations. And that's not going to be easy. Those are hard conversations to have. Those are awkward conversations to have. But to me, it's the height of white privilege to like brush your hands and be like, nope, I'm not dealing with that. Not my problem. Yes, it is your problem. That's something that you need to deal with. And it's like that across the board. If you really want to get something, like when people bitch about Jimmy Dore or Glenn Greenwald going on Tucker Carlson has 5 to 6 million viewers a night. Are you kidding me? If Tucker Carlson wants to talk to me about Julian Assange, I'm going on Tucker Carlson. You are goddamn right. I'm going on Tucker Carlson. I'm going to exploit the shit out of that man's platform, and I'm going to go and I'm going to tell people about why Julian Assange should be out of prison. Absolutely. Are you kidding me? Because I care about this and I want to actually affect change. I want things to change. I mean, I think that these people who refuse to do these things are more concerned about like being able to sit in their safe space and feel smugly superior than they are about ever actually getting anything done. You're never going to get anything done if you isolate yourself into this tiny bubble. Eventually, you're going to be sitting in a room by yourself because you're going. You have to like send out a questionnaire for people to like write down their opinions on every issue before you can befriend them. It's ridiculous. It's so dumb. It's so self-defeating. I don't get it.
Well, we call that preaching to the choir. And this is what I say to people on Facebook in the Canberra group. Look, it's lovely that you like everything I post, but I really wish you wouldn't, because you really are wasting your energy. Why don't you go and put that energy into writing a letter to someone who doesn't agree with you, and you might be able to change their minds. Otherwise, we will just end up existing, and to some extent we do exist in a bit of a bubble of believers. We are the believers, and we've got to move outside of the bubble of believers and have, as you said, conversations with people. And we'll come across people that can't just, they believe what they believe and they won't have the conversation.
Absolutely.
So they just turn to abuse and just say the silliest things to you. Well, you just have to walk away from those. I mean, I guess that's what a classic troll is. They'll just fling all this mud at you, and they're illogical and childish and all of those things. But when we come across people who we can have, I like nothing better than a heated discussion, actually, because I'm a trained philosopher, got a double major in lit and philosophy, and I've upset people because they've thought I was attacking them and being argumentative, and all I was just being passionate.
I get that a lot.
And that can be difficulty too. You've kind of got to you kind of got to tone yourself. There's something that St. Paul said, be all things to all men. All right. So if you meet this person, try and meet that person where they are and this person where they are. So be all things. Like change the way you speak, change your tone, change your manner, and try to appeal where that person
Yes,
is.
know your audience too. I mean,
Know
people
your
get mad at
audience,
me
yeah.
because on Twitter, when I address, conservatives or right-leaning people, I change up my language. I use terms like liberty and freedom and civil liberties and all of that stuff when I'm talking about Julian Assange, because those are buzzwords that they relate to, and that's the audience. If that's who I'm trying to get, then you should be able to, kind of shift yourself so that they are more in tune to what you're saying. And that's just basic stuff. And it's really, really silly to me to just completely rush again. Like people want to say that 70 million Trump voters are irredeemable racists. Are you kidding me? There's a whole lot of room in between Bernie Sanders and like actual Nazis. There's a lot of people in between there that we could be having conversations with. And one of my favorite things is well, why are you focusing on those people when you should be focusing on non-voters? Well, you guys do realize that a lot of non-voters are also right-leaning people who are casually racist. Did you all, because leftists do this all the time. We need to focus on non-voters. Okay, but some of those people are also casually racist. They're not all like lefty communists, your buddies. Really? Is that like the fantasy land that you live in? Because that's not how it works. Some of those people, yes, will be lefty. Some of those people are going to be problematic and they're going to hold problematic views. And are you not going to be willing to talk to those people either? Because you've just isolated yourself even further. And I want to get shit done. And if that means I have to work with somebody that maybe I don't agree with 100% of the time on an issue that I care about, fuck yeah, sign me up for that, because I want to get it done. I'd like to save press freedom in the First Amendment. And if that means that I have to exploit Tucker Carlson's platform or work with somebody who I don't always agree with because they also care about saving the First Amendment, I'm going to do that. And if you actually care about something, that should be a no-brainer, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, we copped a bit of flack for a while. There was someone, look, I won't say who it is. That would be just counterproductive and silly, but it comes from a certain movement in Australia who really disagreed with the whole Unity for J thing, because how could you have anything to do with those right-wing people? Same silly sort of thing. You've got to have this somehow pure and holy set of things that we all agree on. And I mean, us four, we're talking today, I bet you there's stuff that we disagree on if we got to it. And it's
I don't agree with myself 100% of the time.
Yeah, it's very, very, very self-defeating.
The hard part, right? So, like, I've reached out to freaking everybody that I can try to find an email for. And the people that have a more conservative ideology than some others don't respond either, which is the other part of the problem. Right? Like, whether it's a polite, like, hey, I would like to set up an interview with you, or a, hey, this is a strategy document for organizing, like, this is what we're trying to do, would you like to be involved or promote us? It's radio silence, which is why I was so, like, appreciative that Tucker Carlson did give us 4 minutes of his platform.
And Andrew was on Tucker Carlson.
I was the little, like, free speech pilgrim. It was quite exciting.
It was amazing, and you did an excellent job. I know you were super nervous. I would have like puked probably, because I always get really nervous with public speaking.
I had to call Nico House. Before I went on, I called him. I was like, hey buddy, I am
totally going to make, anytime I have to do public speaking, like I'm going to be in Denver in August and Kendra's going to hold an event and I'm going to go and she wants me to speak, I'm calling Nico House, because I can't imagine like our baby Glory, like a better person to get you like feeling confident and good at yourself and ready to go. Like that was a genius move.
But we do have to start actually winding down the vigil. We're coming up on the
I was about to say I've got to go.
Yeah. But I'll let you guys give the first goodbyes. If we could start with Eric, just let people know where they can find you, what events, if any, you have coming up, and anything else you find important.
The details as to the 17th and 18th events for Julian's father's visit, his brother's visit, are kind of up in the air, and I'll have to keep you updated. We've had to reschedule our meeting, Nathan and I have had to. Other than that, I've set up kind of a modest site called the reframer.org. I suppose on Twitter you can find me at reframer.org. And work is at anonymousworldwide.com, nachdenzeiten.de in German, in Spanish and English at intermedia.press, and then also at laprogressive.com. Other than that, I guess I will sign off. And it was very nice to meet you, Lorese.
You too.
Yeah. But I'll keep posting to my social media, and Courage Foundation and Assange Defense will be, posting about the event next month. Anyway, thank you again, guys, for having me on, and I'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lorese, do you want to tell everybody where they can find everything, all your stuff?
Well, on Twitter, Canberra for Assange, on Facebook, Canberra for Assange. And I just quickly say this, I think this is quite amusing. Do you know that, I'm not sure percentage because I haven't counted them, but probably about 85% of the members on Canberra for Assange are Americans.
Oh.
Isn't that weird?
Nice.
Yeah,
that is a little weird.
Well, but it kind of frustrates me a bit too, because I think, oh, come on, all you local people, and I get that Americans join, well, people from all over the world join just to sort of keep an eye on the capital in Australia, but yeah, anyway.
That's funny.
Yeah, it is. It's very amusing. Okay, yeah, lovely to meet you guys. It was a nice discussion, and see you online.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, we appreciate it. Okay. I'm going first, Andrew. See you have to close. I love it. I'm Misty. You can find me on Twitter at Sarcasm Stardust. I know you guys already know all this stuff. I feel like it's like really redundant for me to say it because I'm on Twitter a lot. I have another show called Facts on the Ground with Jesse Zerwell. We just interviewed Scott Denoyer, who is a kick-ass Medicare for All activist. He's got some events coming up in June. Check out that interview. I don't know when Jesse will have it up soon, hopefully. But yeah, definitely check out his events in New York. Bitch with Comrade Misty is on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, which is tomorrow. Tomorrow we have Lucas, my friend Lucas, who is at Spawn and Spinoza on Twitter. He has, we're going to be kind of a more focused episode of Bitch. We're going to be talking about environmental issues, which is something that he's focused on. And so I'm really excited because I adore Lucas. So it's just going to be a good time, period, anyways. So definitely check that out. The Billboard thing, obviously, please. If you can't donate, I get it. Listen, I get it, y'all. Share the link because lots of people having eyes on it is definitely helpful. And we have the event coming up on June 14th that we're going to be using billboards for to kind of lead up to that the week before. And I think that's it.
Cool. My name is Andrew Smith. You can follow me on Twitter at Andrew Zigman. You can follow us on Twitter at action_4Assange. Action4Assange.com. I put a couple of the links out to the old calls to action. They're all still super relevant. They're all still up to date for what they are. Every member of Parliament for Australia is in there in two separate occasions, one in support of David McBride and another in support of Julian. Please remember to keep an eye on everything that is happening over the UC Global case. Craig Murray was prevented from testifying over there due to the fact that the UK found him guilty of a crime and is trying to put him in jail for 8 months and then told him you can't fly while the appeals process is going on to attend one of the most important court cases in European history. Probably the second most. Third most, maybe. Don't want to take away too much credit from other ones. But with that, thank you all for joining us this evening, and don't forget to do what you can with the time and money and resources that you have left.